Hello, everyone, and welcome to this panel session looking at the future of work as part of FTT Virtual Spring. We're delighted to be joined by three great speakers today. We have Deborah Whitman, Head of Policy at the AARP. We have Dean Butler, Head of Digital Strategy at M&G, and also Alistair McQueen, Head of Savings and Retirement at Aviva. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us today. When we set up this session, actually, our intent was to look at the impact of the significant increases in longevity on the workforce and what that meant for the future of work. Obviously, fast forward a few months, and we have also, in addition, a significant part of the workforce working at home. Sometimes literally that transformation has happened almost overnight. And looking at those kind of two key drivers together, we can really start to unpick some significant changes in the future of work. So today, really, we'd like to kick off with you, Deborah, if you can kind of give us an overview of some of the changes that you see.
Great. So I think I'll touch on 2 points just to set the stage. The first is the aging marketplace, and the second is the aging workforce. So in the EU, 1 in 5 people are over age 65, and that number is only going to grow over time. And if we think about the market power of people in their 50s and older, it's huge, and it's a huge market opportunity. And so all of the businesses should be thinking of how to meet the needs of that population. In the US, we measured if the people over age 50 were their own country, how big would that be? And it would actually be the 3rd largest country in the world, with about $8.3 trillion of economic activity. And that's from direct and indirect sources. And then if we added the value of the unpaid activity that people over age 50 give with volunteering and childcare and elder care, it would reach $9 billion. So as we think about the types of technologies that we're developing, we really need to think of this marketplace. And I think we'll be talking about that a little bit more. But the theme today is workforce. And I think this is the first time in history where we've had 4 or even 5 generations all working together at the same time. Now, some of those might be interns and some of those might be later in life workers. But that breadth of experience, that breadth of talent is something that I think is a really crucial piece of society today. And I know with the changes in COVID and the workplace, and I think we'll be talking about that more than ever, we've all learned flexibility. But there are other ways that employers and all of you can think about the workforce in order to make it better. So let me just say a few things about the multi-generational workforce. First, we know that multi-generational teams perform better. And second, we know that they provide more insight into the marketplace. If your customers are older, it's really great to have your employees also understand that population and be part of it. Third, it creates a stronger pipeline of talent, and you keep your talent longer if you're thinking it with a multi-generational mindset. And lastly, workers actually like working in a multi-generational employer. So in the US, 7 out of 10 workers said they like working with people from other generations. So what can you do about it? First, we need to make sure that the policies that we have are age neutral or even encouraging across tenure and age. We need to make sure that when we hire people, we have blind applications so that we're not saying newly minted or fresh out of college. Those types of signals are missing huge amounts of talent that may be returning to work later in careers or just not accessing the best that you have. We need to be careful about age discrimination, and I'm going to call that out because it is a weight on the workforce. In the US, 61% of people over age 45, and 45 is not so old, have either experienced age discrimination or seen it in the workplace. And this age discrimination is costly, just like all kinds of discrimination. If we are not using the talent of people who want to work, if they can't change jobs, if they're unemployed longer, if they feel like they can't even find a job because of their age, it costs our economy. In the US, we'd have 4% higher GDP if we allowed the people who want to work to work. If we looked across the OECD countries, we've just reached new data that showed we'd have by 2030, over the next 30 years, a 19% increase in GDP simply by allowing people to work longer. Now, I want to be careful. We're not forcing people to work longer. Not everybody physically can work. Not everybody wants to work. But we certainly shouldn't eliminate that opportunity. And we should look at the policies and practices we have as employers. And one of the things that ARP has been doing is we're working with the OECD and the World Economic Forum on a project called Living, Learning, and Earning Longer. We launched this about a year ago. We're looking for companies to join us as part of the Learning Collaborative. Key, it's free, and there's no commitment other than joining and listening into the conversations that we have. At the end of the project, next January, if there is a Davos, we'll be launching an online learning platform with all of the great insights that we've had over the course of 2 years. Interestingly enough, we're doing this in the finance vertical of the World Economic Forum. And so we've had a lot of interest from financial services and other companies. And it is a global initiative. So we've been holding meetings in Paris and in Singapore to learn from local ideas and local companies. So we have 3 different platforms. The first is to create, and that's how do you create a culture that is age inclusive and that bolsters a multi-generational workforce. We've seen companies like the Hartford, which is an insurance company here in the US, create employee engagement groups that are YoPro, young professionals, and experienced pros. And they have great conversations across those 2 groups, addressing the issues that both of them feel. We also think people need to invest in their workforce, and they need to really invest in job retraining that lasts throughout a person's career. Nobody is too old to be retrained. The technology use that I think we'll be talking about later is very high, particularly among today's 50 and 60-year-olds who've been using it for 20 years, just like everybody else. And we can also have mentoring and reverse mentoring programs as part of our investment strategy. And the last is, how do we use this multi-generational workforce in order to prosper? We're going to need to adapt to the financial crisis as well as the pandemic, and having a flexible environment that has experience and that goes across generations is a real asset. So with that, I'll turn it over to the group, but I think that sets the stage for a lot of the conversations that we'll have today.
Yeah, you've really laid out some important issues there, Deborah, and thinking about the ways in which work has changed, both kind of in a slow process, and we look at the aging piece, and then very rapidly when we look at remote working. I think it would be great to pass over to you, Dean, to comment on that, and then we'll pick up on some of the other issues that Deborah raised later on in the conversation. Dean, I think you're on mute.
Thank you, Lisa. Am I back?
You're with us. Absolutely.
Am I with you? Apologies. Thank you for that. That just shows some of the technology fails that we see with remote working. And with us having the meeting, with this panel session in this way, just demonstrates, that we're all sat at home, and we've all started to new ways of working in a gift office. or however it is. And we're all very much hit with a black swan event. It's hard to plan for these things. COVID-19 caught us all off guard, but it's tremendous to see, how the industry as a whole has, quickly taken flight to new ways of working, and how we've quickly set up and set ourselves up for success, and how do we, continue to support our customers. And when you look at ourselves, we looked at this in kind of 3 different tranches. We called it the 3 T's, the time, teams, and tools, and how do we support each other throughout this crisis. We are going to talk more broader about working from home, but we have to be quite mindful that right now we're all working amidst a global pandemic. So people like to say to me, Dean, how is working from home going? And it's kind of hard when you sit back and you reflect, actually, there's a pandemic that's happening. We've seen a tremendous loss of life. And at the same time, we're all trying to support our families, support our colleagues, and support our end customers. So it's great to be in an organization that is doing that. And again, the 3 T's, how we've looked at this and stepped back: the time, the team, and the tools. And just go through the 3. So time, yes, we're all in this together. And all of a sudden we've been dropped into a state of working from home where a lot of people are used to being in an office. And time can quickly disappear from you. We need to be mindful that we need time for ourselves, that we need time for our family, and that we need time as a team to get together. So we've ensured that when it comes to time, there are so many working hours in a day, and that people are actually taking time out to have their lunch breaks. So we're kind of blocking that time out, making sure that people are taking the time to take holidays as well. But then also making sure that people can reflect on what their calendars are looking like that week, and making sure that it's just not back-to-back of meetings. So giving people breathing time to actually do their role. And then when it comes to teams, all of a sudden we're not together anymore. It's now virtual meetings. So making sure that we are still connected, then that we have the right tools to do so. And ways of working, and this is where Agile has actually come in and worked quite well within organizations. Agile brings in different disciplines, it brings in different rituals. So every morning, teams are still getting together at 9 a.m. to say what they're doing that day and what they've got planned for the week. As a team and as a leadership team, we've probably got together now more times than we ever did face-to-face. We're making sure that we're there for one another, that we're making sure we can see what's on the horizon, what's happening that week, and how we can quickly and rapidly help support our customers throughout this time as well. And that then very much comes into the way of tools. What tools do we have? And we're in a very good position as an organization. All of a sudden we were hit from having to work from home, but we had the right tools in place to do so. So collaboration tools. Do we have tools for video conferences? Do we have the right chat facilities as well? Instant messages, different chat platforms. And that's where things like Microsoft Teams has massively come in and helped guide us through, how we help this and how we help stay connected as a team. So working from home, it's a novel thing for us all, but it's fair to say, that it's here for the immediate future, and more long-term will stay as well.
Yeah, thank you, Dean. I think you laid out really nicely a lot of the issues that arise when suddenly your team is working remotely. And passing over to you, Alistair, I would imagine a lot of what Deborah and Dean said really resonates for you and what you've done and are doing at Aviva.
Sure, thank you for the introduction. Yeah, I think coronavirus clearly dominates everybody's daily news agenda. But if you just step back for a second, one of the impacts of it is that it's accelerating trends that were already slowly simmering. And the challenge for all of us is to take those as opportunities rather than just focus on the challenges. So yes, remote working has been accelerated. The use of technology has been accelerated. And what I'll focus on is the greater of a longer working life has been accelerated, the point that Deborah touched on. The reality is that the economic shock that we are going to be navigating globally will require many of us to review and revise what would have been our former retirement plans. And one of the levers that many people will choose to pull to try and bridge their retirement plans is that of working longer. Now, Aviva, I work for Aviva. Aviva is a UK large pension provider. We service 6 million people in the United Kingdom out of 40 million working people. So one of the largest providers of private pensions. And there are really two levers that people can pull, as I say, to provide for later life finances. One is they can save more. And Aviva felt we've been holding our head up high and doing all we can there. The second is working longer, and we just felt we didn't have a narrative to talk to. We were only playing in half of the challenge that many of our customers are facing. And so we thought we should address that. I would say initially we focused this as being a nice to do endeavor, helping people work longer, something of an altruistic endeavor. But the mindset for us as an organization has very much shifted from being a nice to do to being a need to do. And I'll try and explain to you and your audience why. Well, we've looked at our working population, and Aviva is a typical large employer, 30,000 employees around the world. And when we noticed that 1/3 of our employees are over the age of 45, that came as a bit of a surprise to us. We then noticed it was our fastest growing age demographic. We hadn't really fully appreciated that. And then we looked at the length of service that they had, and this demographic had an average 17 years of experience with Aviva plus, and we've got 5,000 of them in that demographic. So suddenly we realized we have a population of people with 100,000 years of Aviva experience and knowledge and know how our company works. But then we looked at the attrition rate, and this population was leaving our organization at a faster rate than the younger population. So we had a phenomenal asset, bluntly, that we were not investing in. And when we brought those pieces of information to the boardroom table, it wasn't just the human resources director that was nodding knowingly. Suddenly the finance director is saying, wait a minute, what did you just say there? And that was critical to shifting the mindset in us as an organization. And so we identified the challenge, but what did we do? In summary, we introduced back in 2018 an annual intervention for our employees over the age of 45, a midlife checkup. In the United Kingdom, we call it a midlife MOT. An MOT is an annual car checkup in the United Kingdom, but a midlife checkup. Initially for 45 plus age people. Initially, it was just going to be on finances. That's what Aviva does. But our people told us that, wait a minute, my life is much more than my finances. My life is my wealth, yes, but also my work and also my well-being. So 3 W's for us: wealth, work, and well-being. And we introduced this annual checkup, a 2-hour annual checkup, not intended to make people experts, but intended to boost their confidence. We didn't know how it would go, but 3 immediate bits of feedback we were given. The demand was off the scale. It was a voluntary endeavor, but these sessions were selling out. So that told something. Then immediately afterwards, people were telling us that, yes, my confidence has been improved and my awareness has been improved. So suddenly we've got a population that's feeling more loved in the organization, which is part of our motivation. And then over time, we've noticed that this relatively simple intervention is having commercial benefits in that we are seeing a reduction of absenteeism, an increase in retention of those skills, and a greater recording of what we call engagement or productivity amongst this population. So rather than being an asset that is wasting, it's one that's improving and is giving more to the organization. And so we're now giving that to our own staff on an annual basis. We now make it available as a commercial proposition to the many employers that we service in the United Kingdom. And my closing message would be to any skeptical business asking, is this relevant to me? I would say go back to where we started and look at 3 figures. Look at the relative size of that population in your own organization. And if it's greater than 1/3, it's significant. Look at their average tenure. And if that tenure is more than 10 years, that's significant. And then also look at the attrition rate. And if the attrition rate is more than 10% a year, that's significant. And if you take those 3 boxes, then I think you should also be investing in this population, because you may be wasting assets that you've got in your organization.
That's great to hear, Alistair. And Deborah, I imagine, that's something that you would take as quite positive, that what they're doing at Aviva. Thinking, just from a company by company level, what are some of the policy changes that you think are required in order to incentivize companies both to support their employees working longer and obviously, all the other things that go with it, what they need. And it could be, as well, that we need to think about the changes that need to support people who are also working remotely. But let's start with, what your view is on some of those changes that might be needed. Oh, I think.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I love Alistair's checkup. I think that's brilliant because we see both across the life course. And again, we try and talk about a multi-generational workforce because there are needs of people at different stages of their career and different stages of life. And so I'm going to give a good example. I think other than the US, most countries have really stepped up with maternity and paternity leave. We understand that people have children and that they need care in early life. But we're starting to get better. And again, the US is behind the curve on all of these things for workplace benefits to understand that people are also caring for other people in their lives. We just released a report that says 1 in 5 Americans are taking care of somebody over age 18 to some degree. And about 20% of those are millennials. And so the need to take care of your parents, your grandparents. I was in a conversation the other day with somebody talking about it as the panini generation instead of just the sandwich generation because they were Italian. That these needs for flexibility go beyond just parents with young kids. We're seeing, that in the home situations that many people have in the background of their lives, that, not only are, mostly on these conferences do you at some point hear the pitter patter of little feet, but sometimes you see grandma or grandpa walking by and shuffling by as well. And so really thinking through caregiving practices, which that is a huge burden, particularly on women, but also on men in the workplace. I did one of these calls just a few weeks ago with a woman talking about menopause and the issues of that as a health issue for women later in life that so many employers don't think about, don't talk about, don't know how to deal with, but really can affect women for many years. We also need to think about our skilling, training, all of those programs that we have, as I mentioned earlier, making sure that we're not just taking people at the start of their careers and investing in them, but investing in them across their entire careers. People see the difference of how they're treated. And this goes back to that age discrimination. It can be subtle in your policies if you're not really looking at them in a clear way of who you're inviting to take part in internships and different types of programs that you might have. And lastly, I think that workplace culture of making sure that all people feel valued. No time is that more important than now when our lives are stressed. Our work is ever more important in the things that we do. I think getting to know your people as real people and understanding their needs is really, really crucial. And with the changes in technology, again, people can adapt and grow. One of the more interesting conversations I had was with a shipping company in Singapore. And the gentleman said, we've had our dock workers work for us for 10, 15, 20 years. And rather than hire new people to use the technology, because now I'm going to be using more high tech to keep track of the shipping containers and get them on and off the boats. I'm going to retrain the people because they understand what we're trying to do. They've been part of my team, part of my family for 2 decades. And so I'm going to invest in them rather than somebody new. And I think that mindset that Alistair talked about of treating people, particularly that know all your clients, know your history, know all the details of your accounting and business and different types of strategies, and using and investing in that talent can be highly advantageous, as well as bringing in, younger people that bring in energy and new ideas. So multi-generational is the way we all need to be thinking.
Yeah, I think you raised some great points there, Deborah, and I can see Dean is nodding, so I'll pass to him next. I'm assuming Alistair's nodding as well, but his video is slightly frozen, which is one of the features of this. Oh, he's back. This type of technology.
I can still hear you if you can still hear me.
Yeah, we can absolutely hear you. So, Dean, do you want to pick up on some of what Deborah was saying around perhaps, culture and you touched on a little bit in your opening remarks, supporting people when they're working remotely and understanding the different challenges, not just when they're older, but across those different stages of their lives.
Yes, it's funny. We seem to start every meeting now with, can you hear me or can you see me? But yeah, to touch on some of Deborah's points, there's never been such a poignant moment, especially in my career, where we've needed to support one another. With COVID-19, we're all very much in this together. And, just overnight, we've gone from being in offices to working from home and making makeshift offices and ensuring that we've got the technology, to support us. And it still does very much come back to what I mentioned, the 3 T's and how the 3 T's, the time, the team, and the tools can help one another. But also being very mindful, Deborah is 100% right, being very mindful of what personal circumstances are. Not everybody is able to work from home efficiently. People have got things that are happening in the background, be it children, be it elder family members. Myself, I've got 2 very young children. And even this morning when I kicked off my first meeting, my 6-year-old came in and told everyone on the meeting that we've just found in the garden, and that we need to find out who exactly has killed this bird. So we're opening up a new channel that people have never really seen of ourselves. We're being very much more open, and you're seeing people's more personal needs come to the forefront. And as organizations, we need to make sure that we are catering for the different needs of all our colleagues, all the way from those who are graduates and are out of uni, to those who are much older than ourselves. And the technology should be there as an enabler. It shouldn't be a blocker in any way. So we make sure that we have employee forums set across the entirety of our business, so that when we're rolling out new tools, that we have engagement at the point before they're even rolled out, and that we have the right people champions, that people at home have the right equipment, that we all have headsets, that we have the right broadband space. And even now to a point where if you were having a workplace assessment, that assessment is now actually being carried out at your home. So if you need an ergonomic seat, if you need the right table conditions, that we're able as an organization to continue to support you. And as we look to move out of the UK lockdown, and as we look to see how we get back to a normal office environment, how does working from home continue as part of that overall package? I can't see a future where we are all spending 5 days a week again in an office. The future will be a blend of office and at home. But again, it's making sure that we put packages together that support individual needs, and that there's just not a one-size-fits-all for all employees, and that we actually ask and listen to what their feedback is.
We've momentarily lost sight of Alistair, but he assures me can you still hear us, Alistair? Right, Alistair. So following on from what Dean was saying, and what Deborah pointed to, from a UK context, do you think there's any particular policy changes that we need to think about in order to drive the kind of practice that you're doing at Aviva more broadly across firms in the economy?
Yeah, policy actions typically therefore lead back to government. And I think governments have got their hands full at the moment. And if we sit back and, let's say, wait for government to fix it, then we will not fix it. The challenge is for individual organizations to step forward. Appreciate not the nice to do, but the need to do for this. And so if I just identify 3 things that Aviva's done without government making us do them, one was, and this was driven by a need to retain this incredibly valuable talent, one was reviewing the contractual relationships we have with these people. It used to be 35 hours a week, 52 weeks a year. That's the contract you get. Some people are part-time. For example, we now have annual hours contracts. So we would like to employ you for 100 hours a year or whatever it is, and we'll call you off the bench as and when we need you and as and when you're able to step forward, which is incredibly attractive for people that are maybe phasing into retirement. So legally, how do we contract with people is important. I think it's been touched on. Carers. Aviva had a very strong policy in how we helped parents look after younger members of their family, but we had completely ignored parents who are looking after older members of their family. And that's the pressure that this demographic is feeling. So we now give equal support to parents with younger members of the family and those with older members of the family. So have a look at that. And the third is training and development. In the United Kingdom, all larger organizations must invest in apprenticeships, as we call them in this country. And when you say that word to most people in the street, they think you mean what, a 21-year-old or an 18 or 19-year-old? But that's totally misguided. We've got 65-year-old people who are starting development courses. And what we do is we really encourage them, but also celebrate them to try and break the myth and bust the mold that people have got that career development ends when you get to 50. The anecdote that came back to us was that when somebody was 51 or 52 or 55 years old, went in for their annual review with their boss, the boss would open it with a quick, well, this won't take long, will it? Sending the message back to this person that your career is behind you, which is totally commercially negative for us as an employer. So we're really trying to change it. So contractual relationships, caring responsibility for both of the directions of the generation, and training and development for all, whether you're 18 or whether you're 68 or even 78.
Yeah, let's hope we see that kind of practice across all firms in the economy. And turning for a sec to, oh, sorry, Deborah, did you want to say something? Go ahead.
I did. I was just remiss earlier when we were talking about the program where we're engaging employers so we can take practices like that and spread them across the globe. Alistair, what Aviva is doing is really, really incredible and forward-looking, and what more and more companies need to do. So the Living, Learning, Earning Collaborative that I mentioned earlier, if people want to find out more about it, it is at aarp.org/LLEL, standing for Living, Learning, Earning Longer. Again, this project is free to whoever wants to participate. We have universities in the UK. We have the Center for Aging Better as a partner. And we have monthly workshops to share these types of ideas from one employer to another, or good ideas coming out of the academic and research space as well. So we'd love everybody who's watching this to join us with that project. Again, it's free.
Can
I just come in there? And I think, first of all, I've never heard of it, Deborah, so I will be on there. And I love the living, learning, and earning. It's a really nice way of phrasing it. I say this without wanting clearly to undermine the huge challenge that coronavirus is, and we all have to put that as a priority. We hope it's an acute challenge, and it's a challenge in 2020 and maybe into 21 and beyond, but hopefully it's an acute challenge. We don't know. What we do know is the demographic challenge that the developed world feels is huge, and it's not uncertain whether it's coming or not. It is coming. And the winning organizations will be the ones that, yes, can navigate through the hopefully acute challenge of coronavirus, but also maintain a perspective on the mega trends that are coming over. And I think the United Nations identified demographic pressures as one of the 4 mega trends that the world is facing. So the challenge is a balancing act, acute, but must focus on that longer term as well.
Yeah,
I couldn't agree more.
Absolutely. And just to say, the link that Deborah mentioned, you'll also find in the chat. So for people who want to follow up on that, please look in the chat section. I wonder if we could just slightly shift gears for a second and thinking about, from the perspective of providers, and Deborah, representing an organization that's encouraging innovation. Do you think that the kind of mix of financial products and services are appropriate both for a workforce that's living and working longer, but also for a workforce that's working differently, whether that's remotely or, as you pointed to, Alistair, certain parts of the year and changing gears? So, maybe we could start with you on that, Dean.
Thank you, Elisa. Yeah, so I can put this down to experience, recent personal experience. As we hit COVID-19, I also had to remortgage. And with that came quite a prevalent experience as to how do I now deal with these corporations who are having to quickly, turn their focus to how they work in a COVID environment. How do they set up working from home, but how do they continue to service their customers? Now, mine first started with the financial advisor themselves, the mortgage advisor, who was able to do the role entirely digitally. So we had video meetings. He was able to send me electronic documents for me to complete. Very smooth. We then got to the point where the lender needed to go through the application themselves, and we fell into a as-is scenario, as if COVID had never happened. So it was very much a paper scenario. And when you're hit with a scenario which requires pieces of paper being sent to me to fill in and do a wet signature, but have somebody outside of my house watch me sign this, it wasn't possible, and straight away I even then fall into being a vulnerable customer. And we all fall in and out of vulnerability, one state or another. People do misconceive what vulnerability is, and that they see that vulnerability most of the time is if you have a certain condition. Well, throughout our lifetimes, we all move in and out of different vulnerabilities. And that process in itself came quite labor intensive. It put a lot of worry onto my family. But we're able to get through it in the end. But the main point is that organizations have to quickly adapt and speed up parts of their digital transformation. And, they need to find a way which means the end customer what best suits my needs. And be that whether I wanted it to be sent in paper, be that whether I wanted it to be electronically sent to myself as well. Again, it's not a one size fits all, but it's making sure that you can continue to service your customers in the way that they feel comfortable to do so.
Yeah, and Alistair, passing to you. I know you mentioned the midlife MOT, but in thinking about the way that someone's needs change over the course of a lifetime, do you see, the kind of suite of financial products and services coming out or really starting to focus on the needs of that group?
Well, I think when you ask somebody in my organization or somebody in the street of the UK, who do you go to for financial help, the number one answer is always my mum and dad. And the real risk is that we all think that the retirement that we're going to have of my age is the same that my mum and dad have had of their age. And we're lulled into that false sense of security. And what Aviva focuses on, not so much the end product that they use, but the support that we give people of my age to navigate the financial choices that they're now going to have to navigate. The concept of leaving school, one employer for life, retirement is done for you has gone. And it's a so much more fluid situation. What we as an industry have not done is helped our customers navigate all those choices that are now sitting in their lap. And so while our energy is not so much focusing on a new pension or a new savings vehicle or a new retirement vehicle, that stuff happens. Our energy is how do we empower customers using technology, for example, so that they can navigate through all these choices and so that they don't reach retirement and say, wait a minute, why is it not like my dad's retirement or my mum's retirement? And then if we don't do that, we will get a lot of grief coming back in our direction from our customers. So again, it's not just done for nice to do reasons. 6 million customers could be very angry if they're not getting the retirement that they expect because we haven't informed them, empowered them, and educated them. So that's where we're focusing a lot of our energy.
Just to echo what Alistair is saying as well, that not many people wake up in the morning and think I need to invest or I need to save for the future. Not many people understand how much they have to have set aside for a rainy day, and as organizations, especially yourselves, Alistair, and M&G Prudential, it's up to us to help our customers make those decisions. And with the advent of technology, and as technology continues to progress, with open banking starting to become a thing, we should be able to start making, well, not making decisions, but helping customers make the right decision, and to start building processes that are always on. That if we're able to evaluate what somebody's banking circumstances look like, we can make them start to make the informed decisions. How much should I be saving for my future? What does my retirement look like? What is my health and financial status looking like? And to have these always on conversations, and not just a difficult conversation that actually I've just got close to retirement age and I don't have enough money to continue into retirement.
Yeah, and turning to you, Deborah, for a second, I know that technology plays a central role in some of the thinking you're doing, as AILP is doing as part of the organization. And in particular, maybe you can touch a little bit on how you're leveraging technology to protect people from things like financial fraud, which can become more prevalent as they age.
Well, I just want to make one point on the previous, and then I'll turn to that, which is this environment has just shown the weaknesses of the financial system in so many ways. With over 40 million people in the U.S. unemployed, and there were estimates before this that 40% of our population couldn't come up with $600 if they needed it. Now, if you think about the unemployment rate and people not having that paycheck, they didn't have a lot set aside. And what I like about fintech and what I like about the technology solutions is there are ways that we can tailor them for individual circumstances. I've seen really exciting ones, particularly for people in the gig economy, to help smooth their income and help create savings over time. We also have a DIY retirement system. So I have a PhD in economics, but I can't figure out how much to take out of my account every month, because I don't know what future interest rates are and what the market's going to do and how long I'm going to live and all of those things. And we all know very few people buy annuities. And so I do think people want somebody else to figure it out for them. And some of the technology solutions can really be helpful in that, to help people at least understand the choices and communicate to them in a more clear way than I think financial services technically used in the past. So one of the things that we haven't talked about today that I think is really important as we serve an older customer base is financial fraud and exploitation. Because I spent most of my career trying to help people be financially secure. It really pisses me off when somebody tries to steal it from them. And under COVID, the schemes at which people have come up with in order to try and trick people into giving their accounts and selling stocks that don't work and all kinds of new ways to separate people who need their money from it. Really makes me sick. So a few years ago, we've created an online training program for banks and credit unions in the U.S. of how to recognize financial fraud and exploitation, how to speak up about it and raise questions with the customer or client that's coming to see you, and then what to do to report it, what to do to help protect the person. We did a test on this program and found huge increases in engagement and reporting and actual money saved by people that were trained. We're creating a new one that's with the securities industry for securities brokers as well, and going to be rolling that out this year. But I think in all types of financial environments, the companies and the employees need to be understanding how prevalent this is. Billions of dollars are lost, and billions of dollars are lost by the financial institutions as well. And so it's really a win-win when financial services protect their customers. Their customers are more loyal, they have more money to invest, and they live a better life. Unfortunately, many people who are defrauded suffer long-term health and other consequences from it. And the other thing I need to mention is it's not just, relationship scams and African princes. Oftentimes it's family members who take advantage. And I know that's complicated and many people don't want to get involved, but really you can save a life. And so as people are developing tools and techniques, I want them to be aware that this is a huge issue for the older population and really for everybody. I know I've gotten spoof emails and, there's the number of ways that people try and get between you and your money is huge. So building in those safeguards, training your employees, making sure that that you even design your technologies to be super safe and super easy for your consumers is never more important.
Yeah, thanks for outlining that, Deborah. And I think, picking up on some of what both Dean and Alistair said, there's some really interesting companies out there leveraging things like open banking and big data and analytics to help identify changes in capability before people are defrauded, right? So I've seen some really interesting startups operating in that area. Did you want to come back on that, Alistair or Dean?
No, I would say that if one of the viewers out there wants to be the next Mark Zuckerberg, then my industry, the savings and retirement industry in the United Kingdom, is a rich picking. We've got a very high penetration of internet use in the United Kingdom, 95 to virtually 100% of people regular users of the internet. 8 in 10 people will go to Dean and use it for online banking. Only about 1 in 10 use the internet currently to manage long-term savings and retirement products. Lots of people are out there trying to crack that nut, but if somebody can crack it, then there's a big, big prize awaiting the person that can empower the individual with technology
100%.
in my industry.
Yes, we see that customers in the banking industry are predominantly in cash. And if you're in the industry, you know that over time, cash savings erodes. You're worth less. So the organization who is able to crack that nut and build propositions which aren't just focused on the end product, but built on everyday customer need. Far too much do we see customers at an issue has to arise for them to take note and to take action. Whereas organizations, we should actually be at the forefront. We should be building propositions which are based upon customer centricity and not just an end product.
And let's not convince ourselves that online is just for the funky 20-year-olds. The fastest growing user of the internet in the United Kingdom is the over 55-year-old, and in the next 5 years there'll be no age difference between the over 55 and the under 55. So there's an outdated mindset that, in inverted commas, old people don't use the internet. I guess we've all been using Zoom over the last few weeks with grandparents and great uncles, and so everyone.
Absolutely, and I think that's a great note on which to finish. We've discussed, some really important issues today. I just want to take this time to thank our panel, Deborah, Dean, and Alistair. Thank you so much for joining us today, for sticking with us through some of the technology glitches, which have become an important part of our day-to-day living. The only thing missing from our conversation were pets and children, but I'm sure we all know what that's like. Please stay with us. We have a panel session coming up on the main stage.
I have mine stood outside the door.
Sorry? Oh, sorry, I couldn't hear you, Dean.
Oh, sorry, Lisa. I did have mine stood outside the door. I could have been. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah, I just
playing into the technology.
We're all adapting to this new environment. So thank you again to the panel. Please stay with us on the main stage. We have another panel session coming up. Please join one of our interactive sessions, which are running now, and you can get involved, participate, jump on stage with our speakers. And also, please not forget our fantastic sponsors who are now live and active in our exhibition area. So thanks again to everyone. And I hope, I look forward to carrying on this conversation.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you.
Thank you.